So in this section, I'm going to talk about the user configs that you have saved and how to delete some of them if you no longer need them. It's actually a pretty quick and easy process. So you will, and we're also going to talk about setting devices back to a factory default. That is also something that's very useful. So how do I set something back to factory default? Maybe I'm in the middle of a session, right? I've blocked like 3 hours of time. I'm an hour into it and I finished one of my labs. Now I want to do something else, or I just want to play around or something and I want to delete everything and set it back to factory defaults. How do I do that? Well, in the drop-down window under all of your configs, if I go to my panel here, hold on, let me go to one I actually have available to me. Okay, so right here under Select Configuration, one of the configurations under Initial Configurations, and I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. The first one says Erase All Configs. Just select that. Now this only works on iOS routers and switches. This will not work on anything else. So if you're working on, for example, the collaboration or the security rack, this will not work. But on the CCNA and CCNP racks, they have routers and switches. If you do Erase All Configs and then just click Load Config, that will do exactly what it says. It takes about 5 or 6 minutes, but basically it does a write erase and a reload on all of the routers. And on all the switches, it also deletes the VLAN.dat file, which deletes all of your VLAN and VTP information, as well as doing a write erase and a reload. And then it sets everything back to factory defaults. Now here's one additional thing I would recommend that you do. Let's say that you've done that. Like I said, it takes 5 or 6 minutes for that process to complete. Now, if you foresee that during your 1 or 2 or 3 hour window of time, you're going to want to be going back to a factory default state 3, 4, 5 times, you're not going to want to keep doing this process because that's going to cause you to wait 5 or 6 minutes each time that you do it, and that can add up. Here's my suggestion. Once you do it the very first time, and I think you should do this towards the very beginning when you very first start working on the labs, erase your configs using this, select Erase All Configs and then Load Config. And then what I suggest you do is you access your device. So I'm going to go ahead and access it right here. Okay, and you go into some device. Let's just say for a moment that this device here was back to factory defaults. Okay, so it's been erased. Now what I would do is I would save the configuration, copy, run, but you're not going to do copy, run, start. Copy, run, flash colon, and then give it some name like default config. Or you could say clean slate or clean config or something like that. You'll say, do you really want to call it that? Yep, that name is fine. And so now what you've done is you've taken the configuration, which is basically empty, because remember, you're starting here from a clean slate where there's no config on it, and you've saved that state where there's nothing on it into Flash by that name. And you can view it, directory flash colon, and you can see, there it is. Now what's the benefit to this? Let's say an hour goes by and I'm done working on a particular lab and I say, okay, I want to reset these guys back to factory defaults. Rather than doing write erase and reload, I can simply use the config replace command. Config replace, and then flash colon, because that's where it's stored, default dash config. What config replace does is it's just like it sounds. It replaces the existing configuration. It takes whatever configuration is currently on there and completely swaps it. It's not an additive effect, it's a swapping effect. It swaps it for whatever file you're directing it to. And it'll say, are you sure you want to do this? Type yes. And then it's done. And so in less than 15 seconds, I was able to revert back to basically a blank default config without having to go through all the hassle of write erase and reload. So that's my recommendation. If you want to set things back to factory default the very first time, yes, select Erase All Configs, select Load Config, wait the 5 or 6 minutes, and then log into all your devices and save them where they are with nothing so you can go back to that state much more quickly in the future. So that's how you set back to a factory default. How about erasing your configs? So this is where I'm talking about, I go in here and I say, okay, I've got all these user configs right here and I don't really need these anymore. A lot of these are old. How do I get rid of some of them so I can free up some space here so it's not so big? We'll go back to the main rack rentals page. Click on Config Manager. Select a track, which once again is the rack that you're on. All right, don't think about track in the normal case. This is just dealing with the rack. So we're talking about CCNA, CCNP. And here are all of my user configs. So if I say, okay, this first one here, I don't need it anymore. Delete. And it'll say, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I want to delete it. Config updated. Okay. And now it's gone. Let's delete this one too. Delete. Okay. So it's deleting them one by one. And so that is how you delete your saved configs. One additional thing I want to show you here, which hopefully you will never need to use, is the emergency ticket button. So if you're having a problem with a rack, like let's say it's frozen and or it's having some bug and trace back and crash, or something is bad and you need our lab admins to get into the rack and help troubleshoot it, you can click on emergency ticket. And from here, select the rack that you're working on, select from the pull down menu what kind of problem you're having, type in your messages, your details, and then click on submit ticket. And this will open up a troubleshooting ticket for our lab department, and they'll get back to you quite quickly and help you resolve the problem. So that concludes this particular video on how you delete configurations. In the next video, I'm going to go into now how do you use these racks from a standpoint of what's the most effective and efficient use of your time when dealing with these racks. What's the best way to use them for your NA and your NP studying practice? And we'll talk about that.